Don't stop.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Everything and Anything at a Bit Gay podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randalls Friedman. And today I am going to talk to you about a guest, and I'm going to tell you all about him in a moment. But before I do, I'll just say that this guest made me kind of step back and think about some things that about my relationship. And one of the things, if you have listened to my past episodes, maybe you've heard this, or if you haven't, I'll tell you quickly that me and my husband have been together for 27 years. We got married in Massachusetts when it was legal in Massachusetts in 2007. It was not federally legal at that time. And we decided to go to Provincetown. We just actually came back from Provincetown, which is why it's on the top of my mind also. And we got married there with my two best friends at the time and adjusted the peace. We didn't have any family there. We kind of eloped, I guess, in a way, is what you would say. So we did it, and it wasn't a big wedding, but because again, it was me and my two best friends at the time, and that's it. And we kind of just decided to do it when we got into town for that week. I think we were there for maybe 2 weeks or something that summer. And we did it, and I'm glad we did it. And we did it just because we didn't know what was going to happen from a federal level. And my husband's got a law background, and he's like, we should just get married just to do it. So we did it. And that was good for me. He wanted more. Whenever we had so we've been together 27 years now. And whenever we were hitting our 20th anniversary, he really wanted to do a big wedding. And he wanted to, and so we were sitting in an airport when we were talking about this, like waiting for our flight, wherever we were coming or going to. And I started writing down a list of all the people that we would invite. And we have lived in 18 different places over our 27 years together. And so we've made a lot of friends. And the other thing about Andrew and I that is interesting is that we both have friends from very early in life, and we're still really good friends. Some of his best friends, Jason and Ruthie, are friends that he cherishes and loves. Sherry and Kim and Pam, they're people that he went to elementary school with. Ruthie was his friend since kindergarten, or even maybe before, because I think their families were friends. And so this is somebody that he has grown up with, and he's turning 55 in December. And so he's been friends with Ruthie and Sherry, and because they went to the same elementary school, for at least 50 years. It's crazy that you can know somebody for that long. I'm the same way, where I have all these friends that I've kept not just in contact with, but I text daily or talk to daily, or I'm in communication with several times a week. So my friend Jen and Mandy, shout out to you for putting up with me for so many years, and me certainly for putting up with you, because that's been much rougher on me. Anyway, but you think about all these people that you're friends with, all my college friends, all of my friends that I've made over my different jobs in different cities we've lived in, and when we lived in Switzerland. There's people we would have wanted to invite. And so he wanted this big wedding. And so, by the time we got done with the list, you're talking with a plus one, you could end up with 300 people. And I am not a cheap bitch, and I like nice things. And I'm not going to have a wedding where it's a cash bar. And that's not me. He's going to want oysters. I'm going to want lobster. We're going to want to have an oyster bar there. It would be a really, really expensive wedding. And I'm going to want a good DJ and maybe a live performer. We'd want the whole thing. We're talking literally, I think at the time, we were like, oh, it's going to be $250,000 wedding. And that was years ago. So who knows what it would even cost now. And I step back and I think about why would I want to spend that much money on a party? Why? Because that money can go and pay off a big portion of a mortgage. $300,000 could pay off, a third of a mortgage that we would have, or buy a small summer house up in Vermont or something. I mean, there's a lot you can do with $300,000. So that's kind of why I never wanted to do it. I didn't want to spend the money. I also feel like the planning would all be on my shoulders. We could get a wedding planner, but that's even more money. And I'm going to have to make all the decisions because Andrew is not, he's got ADHD and he's all over the place. And there's just no way that he would have contributed much into this wedding planning. So, going back, the reason why I'm telling you all this is because my guest today's name is Bill, and he is a ritual designer. And I didn't know what that was until I spoke to him. He's an educator and he's an author who helps couples create wedding ceremonies that reflect their identities, values, and love stories without the kind of dusty old playbook or the way that it's meant to be. He lets people do a ritual design for their wedding the way that they want to do it. So, you could, Andrew's Jewish, I'm nothing. And so we'd have to, if we ever did have a wedding ceremony, there would have to be some type of Judaism in our wedding, which I appreciate. Like, I love it that he's Jewish. I love the family traditions. I think, I don't even really know what Andrew thinks about religion. I know he's not religious, but I don't know if he believes in God or anything. Maybe that's something I'll ask him tonight. But I just think that everybody has you're bringing two people together, and most people that come together have completely different backgrounds or different the way they were raised or different values or different traditions or whatever. Like, most of the time, you're not marrying somebody that's just like you, because then it probably doesn't work. That's why I think me and Andrew work so well, is because we're so opposite in so many ways. But this guy Bill will actually kind of create a wedding for you based on what you want, and it doesn't have to be the traditional wedding. He grew up Catholic and was in Catholic school, and he kind of had a turning point in his life and figured things out. And so he wrote a book. His book is called 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mask. And I ordered the book. I'm waiting for it to get here. It's on Amazon. I think it's probably in a lot of local bookstores. And if it's not in local bookstores, ask for it if you want to go to a bookstore and not order from Amazon or order from Barnes & Noble. But he was a really great guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. So I hope you enjoy my interview with Bill. Thanks so much for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. I'm excited to welcome Bill Hulseman. He's a writer, a ritual designer, a former educator who is redefining what it means to belong. In his debut book, 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mass, Bill opens up the raw honesty about queer identity. Welcome to the show, Bill, and I can't wait to get into all this with you.
Thanks, Zach.
So what made you kind of decide to, is this your first book? Were you a writer before that at all? Did you do any writing? I mean, obviously with being an educator, you were a writer, but any short stories or anything that you've put out there in the past?
No, I do not have a gift for fiction. So
Okay.
I've never tried. I've never been inspired to do short stories or fiction or anything. Most of the writing that I did over the course of my teaching career was for my students, or writing curriculum or writing communications to families. When I was a school administrator, we were very careful about crafting our messaging. But no, nothing in terms of personal essays like this book. I wouldn't say I decided to write a book. It was more like the book kind of happened.
So tell me how that happened.
Yeah, I had started writing essays for my weekly newsletter when I had started a new consulting practice. And I was trying to unpack how I landed where I landed, but then I also wanted to understand how we all landed there. So back a couple of years, I had been an educator for many years, and I had been working toward my big job as a school leader, and I got a job as a middle school principal out in Tacoma, Washington, which brought me from the East Coast out to the West Coast, and I was all excited. And 2 days before the first day of school, my mom died after a long illness. So we were ready, but I like to joke that my mom was always really good with timing. Here I thought I was going to be a big shot, and she said, nope,
you're not yet.
I'm taking precedence. So she died, and I never really got my feet on the ground in that first year of working as a middle school principal. And then a year later, my sister died very suddenly, right before the start of the school year, and that was a shock and really sent the whole family reeling because we were all still mourning my mom, and then my dad died a couple months later.
Oh, wow.
So here I've lost 3 people. It felt like bam, bam, bam. Never really had time to recover or process or heal, and that combined with the hardest job I'd ever had, I burned out, and I decided to take time off, and I took a year off to give myself space to heal and be well. And I was also in that time, I moved to Seattle, moved in with my now husband. We got married during that year. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do next. I thought I was going to be running back to schools, and I was not. In fact, every time I thought about schools, I was kind of triggered, like, oh God, I'm not ready to go back. But this was also in 2020. So I started unpacking not just how I landed in a place of burnout and a place of terrible, I felt like I had no resilience in the face of this grief and everything that was happening.
Yeah.
So I had started a little consulting practice and started writing these weekly reflections as part of my newsletter, focused on ritual design and going back to my first love.
So tell me what ritual design means.
Ritual design, I could be a real jerk and just say, well, I design rituals. But I most of my work is in weddings. And so my academic background is in the comparative study of religion. And I did a master's in with a focus on ritual and how we use ritual to create culture, shape relationships, build community. And most of my work is in weddings. And so I work with couples who don't have a tradition to draw on because they didn't grow up in a religious or a cultural tradition with wedding practices, or they want to do something interfaith or intercultural, or they're not welcome in their tradition.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I work with a lot of people who want to have a meaningful process to design their ceremony, but don't necessarily have anything to tap into, or they want to do something creative or non-patriarchal or non-heteronormative or whatever.
Yeah. Amazing.
My goal is to design a ceremony that reflects the experiences and the identities and the values of the people at the center of the ritual. I think of a ritual as a transformative experience, potentially transformative experience. And so with a wedding, especially, you have people paying very close attention. You have people who want to be there because they love the people who are getting married. And so you have a chance to impact how people approach weddings. What do they think marriage is? What do they think a wedding is supposed to be like? A lot of the practices that we have with weddings are rooted in very different places and times. Some of them are rooted in European royal court customs. Some of them are just in imitation of Queen Victoria's wedding. We do a lot of things in imitation of these things. I want to develop more authentic ceremonies. And so I work with couples and I give them context, like, hey, does this practice that you want to include really resonate with your values? Like, you are a hardcore feminist. Are you sure you want your father to hand you off on the aisle? Things like that. So we look at, and I don't tell them what they should include, but I want to give them context so that they can make decisions. Yeah, this should be part of our ceremony. Yes, we want to reframe this or rethink it. So that's what most of my ritual design work focuses on. Working with couples to construct this experience, but I also hope that it's a moment that can have a ripple effect on how we think about these moments. And here we have an opportunity to define what marriage means for us and to formalize it in a ritual space.
So I have 2 questions for you. One is, how did you meet your husband? And 2 is, what was your wedding like?
My wedding was awesome. I met my husband on the apps. I was living in Tacoma, which is south of Seattle, and he was living in Seattle and doing a lot of work in Portland. So he was driving back and forth, and he would pass Tacoma. And on the apps, our grids would link up. And, so first we met on, I think it was Scruff. First we went on Scruff. Then we met on Grindr. And then we connected on OkCupid. And that's when I said, okay, the universe is trying to tell us something. Here's my number. We started communicating, we started texting, and we got to be friends on social media. But I put off meeting because I was in the middle of people dying. Everybody was dying. My mom had died in the summer of 2015, right before the school year started. My sister died very suddenly a year later, and then my dad a couple months after her. I started texting with John right after my sister died, and I had put off connecting in person because I didn't know. I knew my dad was going to be dying any second,
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't want to make a plan. I didn't have bandwidth for new people in my life at that point. I didn't want to have to whisk off to Chicago and cancel things. So my dad died at the end of 2016. And then when I got back in town and started to breathe again, well, maybe I'll text John and see if he wants to meet for lunch.
Yeah.
At lunch, I explained the whole, like, why I'd been putting it on. He thought I was just being an asshole. Like, oh, he's just stringing me along, like, whatever. And I explained the whole thing. Then he felt like a jerk. And I was like, no, that's not what I meant.
Did you know when you met him in person, he was the one?
No. And I don't think he did either. I think we knew neither of us wanted it. Neither of us was looking to get married. Neither of us wanted to get married. Neither of us was even looking for a relationship. He was really fresh out of an 8-year relationship, and he was processing that and healing from that and that whole transition. And I had my own relationship that had ended a long time before, but I was still not, there was nothing really pulling me into, I didn't want a relationship. I didn't want to get married. But when we connected, we were far enough away from each other that I thought, okay, well, this is fun. We can hang out once in a while.
Yeah.
Our third date was like a weekend away in Arizona because it was like, wasn't this fun? Like, cute guy that I get to go like fuck for a weekend and hang out, and then we're good friends, and it just felt really natural, and it wasn't like we were out for a commitment.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we found ourselves hanging out every weekend. Either I was driving up to Seattle and hanging out at his place, or he was coming out to Tacoma. And so after a while, it was like, okay, like something's happening here, and then the ball started rolling.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what was your wedding?
The wedding was just wonderful. I made him go through my whole process of designing a wedding ceremony, and I do a little vows workshop. So I made him do the vows workshop. He would tell people like, he's giving me homework to work on our vows. But I got to try out a lot of abstract ideas, for ritual. But it was also this amazing thing that it wasn't just an abstract exercise for me. It was suddenly, this is for me. Wow, I'm experiencing this. So in the moment of the ceremony, I remembered feeling really grateful and also kind of shocked. Like, is this how people feel when they're getting married? Like, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
But our ceremony was very much, we preserved the traditions that we wanted to preserve, but we also were very conscientious about not being heteronormative, and we didn't want it to feel like anybody else's wedding. So we did a wedding in the round. We didn't do a big entrance. We just kind of wandered to the center of the circle when it was time. Our officiant was a friend of ours, gave us the nod, like, time to start. So meandered to the center while chatting with people, and then started. And we didn't do a big exit either, because we didn't want it to, we didn't want that whole pastiche.
Yeah.
So we did our first dance at the very end of the ceremony, and we invited everybody to join us. So our officiant pronounced us married and said, I pronounce you married and invite you to share your first dance as a married couple. The music started, we danced for a few bars, our witnesses were instructed, you get 4 bars, and then you grab your partners and start dancing. And then everybody else was invited to join. And then we got to sneak off. This is what happens when you get 2 introverts getting married, and you're like, well, I know it's all about us, but do they have to be staring at us the whole time? So we were trying to do things to mitigate that feeling of like that we were on stage, that we were performing.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, now back to the show. Well, let's talk a little bit kind of about, so let me just ask you the question. How do we begin to question the identity that we're given at birth?
I think we take identity as granted, as this is just something you're given, and good luck. Hope it works out for you.
Yeah.
I think of identity more as a tool. I think of identity as a tool for understanding yourself, for understanding others, for understanding the world, a tool for navigating the world, in some way. So I think if we think of it as something we can use, something we can manipulate, then it's a lot easier to think about, there are identities that are given to us, and we have a choice to hold on to them and to cultivate them, or to reshape them, or to pick up some new identities. I think it's also helpful to notice that we have multiple identities. I don't mean this in the psychiatric sense. I mean,
Yeah.
we have our sexual identity, we have our religious identity, we have our racial and ethnic identities, we have our cultural identities, all these other facets of our lives where we see affinity with other people, where we experience things that other people are experiencing. So if we can recognize that, I've got options. We have so many layers to us. Like, which one do I need to lean into at this point in my life, or in this part of the world, or to keep me safe, or to be brave, be courageous. So for me, I think it took me too long to recognize that the identities that were handed to me, I could let go of, I could put down, or I could really transform.
What's an example of one of the like religion?
Religion's a big one.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot in my book, from a different couple of angles. Religion is absolutely one of those identities. I grew up Catholic in an Irish Catholic family, and I had a really positive experience of religion growing up. And it wasn't just community. It wasn't just smells and bells, the pomp and circumstance of going to church. But I felt deep resonance. I had deep religious experiences. I was fascinated by going to church and seeing the imagery and the language and the music and the choreography. And to me, it didn't feel just performative. It was performative for something else. And, so it piqued my interest, as a kid, even. I was deeply engaged in retreats and liturgies. And then as a teacher, I started teaching religion, and I was working as a campus minister in a Catholic school. I saw that as my opportunity to move the needle on the church. I thought, I couldn't be totally out at work, but my students knew. I mean, they knew. Also, this is a weird story to tell. My first year teaching, I was on my way to a birthday party with my boyfriend at the time, and we had a couple of martinis, and we were getting a little handsy on the train. We were on the T. I was living in Boston at the time, so we were on the T heading out to Jamaica Plain for a birthday party, and kind of making out on the train. And we get to our stop, and I look, and one of my students is directly across from us.
Oh my God!
Imagine my panic.
Yeah.
So, this is a month into the school year, my first year teaching in a Catholic school. I'm like, oh, hi. So as the train pulled away, it's like, oh God, I'm getting fired. On Monday, that kid and I crossed paths, and I said, how's it going? And she said, it's all good. It's all good. I was like, oh, okay. So that was my sign, that my cue from her, that she wasn't going to be gossiping about it. It wasn't going to be a problem.
Was this high school?
This was a high school. Yeah. She was a senior in high school.
Okay.
And then a couple years later, another student referred to that student. And I said, hey, did she ever tell you a story about me? And she said, on the train. And I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, everybody knows about that. Okay.
That's kind of great.
But it was never a problem for me, because I wasn't recruiting anybody. It was, that was a piece of me. I didn't bring it into my work, but my students knew I was there.
Yeah. But it's good that it was Boston too, because Boston's such. I live in Boston now, and it's it's liberal here for the most part.
Yeah, and that helps. That helps. I moved to DC after that to work at another Catholic school, and even that transition to DC, it was a decidedly more conservative Catholic culture. Never mind the general climate. And when I got to that school, I was also working. I was leading a service program, and I was still sort of the face of the church for a lot of my students. And then I went to a conference. And I saw Dan Savage speak about the It Gets Better project. So Dan, the sex writer and columnist, and podcaster, he was giving a talk about the It Gets Better project that he and his husband Terry founded in response to a spate of teen suicides. Young people who were committing suicide at some level, because of their sexual identity, because of their sexual orientation, and the bullying they were experiencing, or the fears that they had. So they started the It Gets Better project to get the messages from people into kids' hands, with computers and with phones. You could lock the doors, and Dan and Terry said that we can still get into your kid's pocket and get them the message on YouTube, like It Gets Better. So it was a great session. Everybody was really moved and enthused. And then he started taking questions, and somebody got up and said, I'm asking a question on behalf of somebody else here, because if they got up to ask a question, working in a conservative religious school, just standing up to ask the question would get them fired. And everybody in the room, clutched the pearls, like, oh, could you ever work someplace like that? And those of us from the Catholic school are like, oh, that sounds familiar. Do we know you? Yeah. So they asked the question, something like, here's this position. I'm a queer educator at this very conservative religious school. How do you recommend that? What can I do to better support my queer students? And Dan took a second and he cocked his head and thought, And he said, you're not going to like my answer. He said, my advice would be to get your resume in order. And that kind of took a moment to let that ripple through the room. He said, you think your presence there is communicating safety, like, hey, it's okay, I'm here, I've got my eye on you. What you're really communicating to them is that it's okay to leave part of yourself at the door on the way into work. In a half second, like my whole self-understanding as an educator, it crumbled. And I say, Dan Savage ruined my life. I titled an essay in the book, Dan Savage ruined my life. Because in that moment, I couldn't recover from that. I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't unthink it. And that's when I started to unpack, okay, I took this religious identity on without really critically thinking about, the next steps. Like I quashed part of myself so that I could maybe move the needle in a direction. But I'm not sure that, with Dan's perspective, I wasn't sure that was what I was doing anymore. I wondered, am I complicit with this institution? Am I, so that started the path for me to get my resume in order. And I got out of Catholic schools, went to an Episcopal school, and it was a big deal for me the first day that I moved into my office. I was able to put up a safe space poster, which even that, I hadn't realized like what a simple thing like that, and I couldn't do in my own classroom is, to say that this is a safe space for students.
Yeah.
So that was one example. So my religious identity, I've never rejected it. There are a lot of people who had really bad experience with religion. They call themselves ex-Catholic or recovering Catholic or whatever. No, I still identify as Catholic, but I don't practice anymore because I won't. It's still written into me. It's still part of me. It still shapes my worldview. It still shapes my actions. It still guides my decision making and how I connect with people and how I understand things. But I don't participate in it anymore because I can't get past that sense of complicity.
And in your book, your final section, you devote it to your queer identity. Talk about that a little bit.
So as I had explained, most of the book was written in this weekly newsletter. Most of the essays originated in my newsletter. This section, the Pride section, originated a little bit differently. In 2019, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. And in 2020, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the first Pride Parade. And that was a moment for queer people to rejoice and look back and look how far we've come. But I went to the mall one day in the middle of June, and it was like a rainbow had thrown, like a unicorn had thrown up, and there was just everything was rainbows. All the corporations, all the stores who were trying to be rainbow branded and show themselves as queer friendly.
Yeah.
And I started paying attention to the parades differently because I thought, oh gosh, why is everything, all these giant corporate floats, and then you've got the tiny little community organizations, who are excited to be able to hold up a banner or, and I thought, okay, this is not where Pride needs to be going. Watching the corporate display and watching corporations take over the narrative and take over the rhetoric, that to me did not feel like a future of equity and inclusion. Yeah. So I wanted to shift gears and, okay, how do I make this meaningful for me? So during the month of June, I set a little bit of time aside each day to think about who were the people, what were the experiences that I had that helped me shape my queer identity, that gave me language to understand myself, that where I saw myself reflected, when, as a kid, I didn't see myself reflected in anywhere but things like the Golden Girls and Designing Women. So I wanted to uplift and kind of think about what were the influences that gave me language, that helped me understand myself, gave me courage to be queer, to be out, And so each essay originated in that daily practice. And I call the process making Pride meaningful. And it's really just personalizing Pride or making Pride personal. and making it not just political, not just about the parties and the events, but isn't it worth taking some time to think about and honor the influences that preceded us, and to think about, what's the path that we're paving for, people who will follow us. And I think that's what the third part is all celebrating those influences.
I love that, because I think about, I think there was a point where, I worked for big corporations that would have the big pride parade floats in it and stuff. And, I walked in a pride parade in Boston with the company. We didn't have a big float, but there was 50 of us walking with, our corporate logo and T-shirts and stuff. And we bought our way into it in a way. So it was nice to be a part of it, but it did make me think after walking in that parade. Like, I'm like, seems like so fake. And then, like you were kind of just saying, like, you walk into these stores and it's just pride everywhere. But now we have the opposite happening, where we have Target, who won't do anything, and they just lost like $12 billion, I think, because they decided to get rid of
Isn't that incredible?
It is. It's so incredible. And you also have, I don't try not to get too political on this show, but you have all these anti-LGBTQ laws and transgender, they want to take away all these transgender rights and stuff today. And I think it's more important than ever for people to kind of speak up and to kind of like say who they are and feel good about it. And I'm in a bubble in Boston, so I can walk down the street holding hands with my husband, or I can make out in the tea with him if I wanted to, and no one's going to bash us or say anything about it. So I feel lucky. But I think about, like, all these other places now that you can't do that anymore. It felt like we were going that direction where you could almost be LGBTQ plus anywhere. Even where I grew up in Miami, and now I lived in South Beach during college. Like, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable even going to South Beach holding hands down the street anymore, because it's Florida and it's so different now. Like, what is your kind of thought on how we've shifted from being too much pride, where everybody's, it's the corporate pride, and, we're selling all these rainbow T-shirts and stuff in Target and stuff, to now where people are starting to go back in the closet, or they're hiding their identity? What is your thoughts on that?
In terms of, people reverting, right? Going back into the closet or not being as bold. I don't blame anybody for that. If they are in a place where it's no longer safe, if it's a place where they are going to lose their job or their housing or access to healthcare, or just feeling safe walking down the street, I don't begrudge anybody that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like pride celebrations and the withdrawal of the corporate funding, I'm really grateful for it, because I think now we know who our friends are. It's like, oh, okay, so these are the corporations that put up the display, but they weren't shining a light on the policies that they were denying to their queer employees, or the funding that they were giving to politicians who were acting very much against our betterment. So I'm glad that they've disappeared. And I think that actually creates an opening. There was a lot of panic because, of course, there's a whole little microeconomy that builds up around a pride parade, and, the festival celebrations. But I'm glad that they pulled out, because we can actually start to build something that's ours and not corporate friendly. I remember I watched the Boston Parade many years. I sang with the Boston Gay Men's Chorus for 10 years.
Oh, awesome.
I marched almost every year in the Pride Parade with the chorus. And gosh, I remember those being such profound experiences for us walking. But then I also remember watching people on the sidewalks, like, not really into it. Like, okay, cool. So it's like the big floats, start throwing shit out, all the swag and the stickers and the buttons. All we wanted to do was walk and kind of wave. And so the reactions from people then, I wonder if maybe we were all a little too cynical. Maybe we weren't celebrating each other enough.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a lesson that we can glean now, is like, let's ignore the corporate takeover. Let's ignore the big narrative and own our voices, so that we can really be our best selves. And I think the more that places like Boston can spread. I'm in Seattle. I'm in a similar experience. I feel very safe in my neighborhood, throughout the city. I feel like the laws are in place to protect me. All the elected representatives that represent my little piece of the earth they're doing all the things that I hope that they would be doing. But I can't forget the people who are in those places where they are daily facing the threats. I have a sibling who's trans non-binary, and hearing their experiences just on a daily basis, the daily interactions with people who are dead naming them, or they had a harrowing experience going through TSA, one day because the driver's license and the passport had different gender markers, and that created a whole thing. I think about how good I have it.
Yeah.
And as a white cis man, I can coast by a lot of things that other people are stuck in, and it's I don't think it's right for me to ignore that. It doesn't help. That doesn't help me in the long run, because it just makes everything more destabilized for people who are in safer spaces. So I think I want to see these bubbles grow. It's not about taking over other people's lives. It's about making a space where people feel safe to be themselves.
Yeah. I think it's have you and your husband talked about if same-sex marriage is taken away? I mean, I guess in Washington State, you would still be married legally in that state.
Yeah, we're going to be okay in Washington, but
from a federal standpoint, would be fine in Massachusetts as well. But have you thought about, like, what do they have to do for you not to feel safe in this country anymore?
Yeah, we haven't quite set our red line. We have friends and some family who are quite literally leaving the country.
Mm-hmm. I just interviewed a guy earlier today, who him and his husband left Seattle, actually, and moved to Spain because they just can't do it anymore. And, they felt safe in Seattle. They have friends. His mother is very liberal and supporting, and so was his husband's family. But they're just like, they can't live in this country anymore with the way where it's heading. I don't know. He didn't really say if he was scared, but he did just say it's just not somewhere he wants to be anymore. So
yeah. I'm not an activist. Like, I'm not the person who's out on the front lines. I'm a pretty chill person. Like, I am not revolutionary in spirit.
Yeah.
I'm not eager for a revolution, because a revolution means violence, and I'm a pacifist. So that terrifies me. On the other hand, I also know that with the privilege that I do enjoy, I should probably stick around. And at a certain point, it's going to be really clear that I need to exert my privilege to protect somebody else. Or I will say that, a couple of things that we've been talking about are like, do we need to have an escape plan to get out of the house? Do we need to have places to hide people in our house? When I was in college and grad school, I did a lot of work around the Holocaust and the history of anti-Semitism leading up to it, the experience of the Holocaust for Jews in Europe, but also homosexuals, people with disabilities, political dissenters, everybody who was targeted by the Nazi regime. And in the last 10 years, I've been saying to everybody, hey, I know, like, this happened once. We see where this is going. We know where this is going. It has to stop now. And too many people were saying, like, oh, no. Oh, it's going to fade. Oh, the elections, the midterms are in a couple of years. Like, it'll go away. I don't think we're in that moment anymore.
Yeah.
So now I think about, there were people who got out of Germany before 1938. And then there were the people who were there, who were stuck.
Yeah.
And after the borders closed. And I feel like, are we ever going to get to the point that the borders are going to close and we're actually going to be stuck? Maybe. And that's horrifying to think that that's even a possibility. But I'm not quite ready to flee yet. I guess that's what I'm saying. I think I do enjoy enough privilege. I'd rather apply that to whoever needs protection when they need protection. And I don't begrudge people who pick up and go, because they're making the right decisions for them.
Yeah. I hope I don't have to go. I mean, we have a kind of a plan. Not really. I guess we've talked about it just like everybody else has, but yeah.
We literally were out for a walk down to the Sunday market in our neighborhood, and it's along the canal in Seattle. and we were literally talking about, oh, isn't this path interesting because it's far enough away from the road, but it's also you could jump off and hide really easily or get into the water or swim across. And then we were like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
We're like, everywhere we're going, we're now like looking for the escape route. And
Yeah.
that's and that's me. Never mind, people of color, never mind people who are trans, non-binary, never mind like everybody else who's being very explicitly targeted right now. It just is. I can't believe we're in this world. I can't believe we're here.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know what I hate hearing? I hate hearing people saying, "Oh, it's history repeating itself."
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're letting history take all the power. It's like, oh no, history is not a person. Like history is not repeating itself. We are repeating history. We have made choices to repeat history.
Mm-hmm.
And until we start to see it that way, like then we don't take responsibility for how we got here, and we don't take the reins for moving forward.
Yeah. I still have hope for some reason. I mean, I'm not giving up hope yet. I still feel like we could still turn this around. Like we're not too far gone yet. But
what nurtures that hope for you?
I just think that with the power of social media, and you have the right people that are standing up and speaking out, and you see the protests that are happening. And again, I'm not a big activist either.
Yeah.
But I think that because we still have so many people that care about other people and don't want to fall into that Trump MAGA world. And I think the more he does and the less people, I mean, there's going to be those, and I hate being political on this show, but I think there's some MAGA people, no matter what he does, they're just never going to, they're always going to support him and follow that road.
Yeah.
But I do think, I mean, my mom is very liberal, Democrat, but she has friends because of where she lives in Southern Illinois, that are Trump supporters and are very MAGA supporters. And even some of her friends, this is what gave me hope, have said we didn't vote for him this time. Like we just couldn't do it. Like he's gone too far. And so whenever I start hearing those type of things, it just makes me feel like, all right, if that person can not do it, that means there's other people that are like that too. So, I just think that people are speaking up loud. They're being louder now than they have in the past. And, I think that's what we need. Even, and, I do another podcast. It's called Listen Up Girl. And it's like a 10-minute or less LGBTQ plus news podcast. And I did it, and I was doing it once a week, and I was just kind of doing it just because I thought, and then I started getting messages from people like, this is so important that you're doing this and you're talking about the things that are happening. And, I'm talking about the transgender rights that are being taken away. And I'm talking about, all these things. I have good stories and positive stories in there too, because I try to do a mix. But whenever I started getting like a DM or an email from somebody saying please keep doing this, it's important, I'm like, wow, okay. Like I didn't even know if he was listening to this thing. So, and I'm kind of informing people of what's happening. And and so that's kind of my contribution to maybe helping change things in a way, I feel like. So
I think that's powerful. I think I think anybody with a platform, you've got a beautiful platform and you cultivate really beautiful conversations, and you can't not acknowledge the things that are happening. I don't think that's necessarily being political. It's just paying attention.
Yeah. I just want to come on and talk about all my political views on this podcast. I try not to, even though everybody knows what my political views are. So and we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. I want to get back to you. I want to hear about your Madonna nerding out phase. I'm a huge Madonna fan, and I think I've had some Madonna nerding out things too, and I have lots of Madonna stories. I even did a short podcast, which I'm not going to talk about too much, with one of Madonna's dancers that was in Truth or Dare. We recorded 4 seasons. Only a season and a half got put out, and for creative differences, we'll just say, that's no longer available. But I got to interview Nikki and Donna from her show. I got to interview Oliver also, and I got to meet this particular person, which I will not say their name, but we did a photo shoot together, and we recorded literally 4 full seasons of the show. So I am a Madonna fan. Maybe not a Truth or Dare fan as much anymore after this experience, but I am a Madonna fan. So tell me about your nerdy
I
Madonna.
love that. I respect your Madonna nerdery. I'm in awe of your ability to connect with all these people who have been part of that magic. So, yeah, my relationship with Madonna goes way back. She does not know it, but we're very close.
Yeah.
I think I first saw her on TV during like an after school music video hour when I was like 4th grade.
Yeah.
And I think it was Open Your Heart. And something in me was like, yeah, that's my girl. Like, I don't know why. It was like one of those OGTs, like, original gay traits. It's like, I don't know why, but I love her. But I kind of kept it under wraps because also saying I love Madonna was in the late 80s and 90s. Like, that was basically like coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was not in a place to let people know that yet. But when I got to divinity school, I got to grad school, and I was doing a course on the intersection of eroticism and mysticism in different contexts and different cultural and religious traditions. And while our professor was guiding us looking at these different case studies and different contexts, each of us was doing independent research as well related to the topic. Now, the Ray of Light album had come out a year and a half before that. And I thought, well, that, if anything, is a great example of an intersection of eroticism and mysticism and a little bit of dance music. So I thought, I'll do my paper on that. I'll do like a close reading, kind of with a theological lens. I'll do a reading of the album. I fell down a rabbit hole of Madonna studies. There was this whole academic movement in the 80s and 90s. People from different disciplines, theologians, gender theorists, pop culture critics, sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists. Nobody knew what to do with her. Like, no, she broke all the molds. She didn't fit into any precedent in the industry, in culture. As a feminist figure, she was divisive. As a cultural figure, she was divisive. So nobody knew what to do with her. Yeah, it was fascinating that there were these academic groups at conferences who would get together and share papers and research and talk about, what does this mean? Well, that planted a seed in me. I mean, this turned into a 28-page paper. I don't know how many citations I included in it, but it was fascinating. It was great. So I turned that research into lessons that I would use in my coursework. I spun it into professional development workshops with colleagues. And then in the last few years, I've started doing what I call symposia, our weekly. The Madonna Symposium lasts 5 weeks, and each week we look at a different aspect of Madonna's work. Now, I'm not, Madonna Louise Ciccone is an interesting person, but it's not like a personal fascination for me. I think it's amazing that Madonna, kind of capital M Madonna, right? The whole complex of artists and stylists and producers and, everybody who is part of that team that is fueled by her vision, and that is, it is definitely revolving around her. There's something about her, but that whole team has measurably moved the needle in pop culture, in global culture, which is fast. So I think that alone, whether you love or hate her or her music, I think that alone is worth paying attention to. It's like, how do we create culture? Well, let's look at Madonna as an example. Yeah. So each week we look at a different aspect of Madonna's work. Like one week we'll look at Madonna as a catalyst of postmodernism, and we look at how her music and videos sort of introduce ideas like intersectionality and multiplicity of authoritative voices, these things we associate with postmodernism, and she's bringing it into mainstream pop culture. We look at, we follow her as an activist, as a social commentator, the ways that she has very deliberately brought people in for collaboration to share her platform. Mm-hmm. A couple of years ago, I did a one session for Microsoft for their Pride observances, and this group at Microsoft had been talking about allyship, and they wanted to somehow bring that into focus. Like, okay, great. So let's look at Madonna as a queer ally. So we looked at Madonna as a queer ally and the arc of allyship that she demonstrates.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool to look at, like, okay, in the early part of her career, she was definitely the white savior. You know, you think about the Like a Prayer video, and like she's out there dancing in her skimpy dress in front of the black chorus. You know, she's out there dancing in front of the burning crosses. So she's definitely the white savior. She is Michelle Pfeiffer at the front of the classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just, you know, very quickly she shifts to Vogue. Now, Vogue is problematic for a lot of reasons in terms of, you know, the appropriation of the ballroom culture. But if you look at the video, she's not trying to take away their choreography. She's kind of doing her own voguing side by side. So she's sharing the platform. So she started out dancing out front, and then she's sharing the platform side by side with the people from the ballroom and with the people who created that world. Mm-hmm. That really inspired the music, the song. And then you flash way forward to like Madame X, so the dark ballet video, which I think is one of the most fascinating and beautiful pieces of like cinematography in the last couple decades. But she's barely on screen, right? It's the video and the song is about Joan of Arc, and Mickey Blanco, who's, you know, trans person of color, an activist, right, plays Joan of Arc. And so we see a lot of Mickey. We get Madonna for like 4 seconds. And she's even veiled. She's a witness to the execution of Joan of Arc. So looking at those kind of 3 touch points alone, you see an arc of allyship. And, you know, sometimes you need to be the person out front defending, you know, the people behind you. Sometimes you need to share your platform, and sometimes you just need to get the fuck out of the way. And I feel like Madonna is a great example of not just in each of those moments doing it interestingly and well and with integrity, but also she's changed over time. She hasn't just been the white savior her whole career. She learned from that. She got out of the way, right?
Yeah.
So for all these reasons, yeah, I continue to be obsessed with Madonna.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love her. I've loved her since I was in 4th grade, actually, too, whenever I remember hearing her first song, and something just clicked with me. So yeah. I'm with you.
Do you have a favorite album of hers? Or
Ray of Light, I love.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Ray of Light is probably my favorite album.
It's pretty special.
Yeah. Bill, you have been amazing to talk to. Thank you so much. Like, I felt like we went in a lot of different directions in this conversation. So I will put the link to your book on the description of this podcast or video. I'll also put a link to your website. The name of the book, again, just in case, but it will be in the description, but it's 6 to Carry the Casket and 1 to Say the Mass. And you can get that on Amazon. And is it available in all bookstores too?
I would love for people to ask at their local independent bookstore for it. That would be great. It's totally available. It's on Allstora, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Yeah. But yeah, it's anywhere fine books are sold.
Great. Thank you so much for being on, Bill. And it was a pleasure meeting you. And thanks, everybody. And please go out and buy Bill's book today. And also leave a message on what you thought about this podcast. And subscribe if you haven't already. So thanks again, Bill, for being on.
Thank you, Zach.